The Book of Boba Fett. Let's talk about it. Alright, so technically this is not a movie review, it's a series review, but it's in the Star Wars movie universe, so I'm counting it, goddammit. Alright, what are we? Episode 5? I don't even know what episode of which one we're on now. Just a quick review of Book of Boba Fett as it is so far. It's pretty mediocre, and that's saying something. It's also really trying to rely on a lot of member berries and a lot of nostalgia. And while that isn't always a bad thing, the way this series is laid out is. So, first and foremost, the series starts out with him in a Bacta tank after having taken over Bib Fortuna's throne on Tatooine, and from there on we get a buttload of flashbacks. They could have just called this Previously on Boba Fett, except this would be stuff we never saw. So a good portion of every episode up till the current one, I believe, was flashbacks. And while flashbacks are great, to have them be at very minimal half of an episode, every episode gets really old really fast. And some series can make it really work because it builds backstory and stuff like that. And in a non-linear storytelling mode, flashbacks work because it helps to connect those things together. Lost is a good example of this. I think even Dexter technically does work, but he also isn't doing flashbacks every episode. So basically, it picks up a little while after Return of the Jedi. It's not really spoken exactly how long, but presumably the Empire has fallen by that point. And you see him wake up in the Sarlacc, all covered in stomach acid, and he can't breathe. He doesn't have any air, which is weird because I could have sworn that Mandalorian suits had onboard air. I mean, it's entirely possible he ran out because he didn't. Who knows? And he hasn't been in there super long because I think Jabba's sail barge is still kind of toasty. And he sees a stormtrooper from episode 4. Same type of stormtrooper that was looking for Luke. We don't know how this stormtrooper got in there or why. Tatooine was really not on the Empire's radar except for when they went looking for the droids. Is it possible? Probably. I mean, they kind of crashed out in the middle of nowhere, so maybe they just sent out enough search parties. But they found the crashed ship due to its signal, or the crashed pod, or whatever. So either way, nobody knows how it got there. He borrows a little bit of air from that guy's tank, which apparently still functions, and then using his flamethrower, burns his way out through the side of the Sarlacc and then up and out through the sand, very much in the way that Patton Oswalt did during his filibuster, which was funny. And you could tell that's how they wanted it to be. It's not exactly canon. I think in some point in the comics or one of the other books or something, he blew up a thermal detonator or whatever, and that's what got the Sarlacc to spit him out. And he wasn't even in there super long. He was in there long enough to be unconscious and being partly digested, stuff like that. So he crawls out, passes out. Jawas find him, steal all his armor, knock his ass out. And then Sand People find him. And basically, what we end up getting for at least the first the solid first 3 episodes is flashbacks to his time with the Tuskens, or with the Sand People, or with the Raiders, or whatever you want to call them. And it's a very Dances with Wolves situation where he gets taken in as a prisoner, and then they want to use him as a digging slave. And basically, series of events, he worms his way into their good graces, starts to learn their ways, kind of becomes one with the village, starts helping them out. When there's a Pike Syndicate spice train, yes, that's a sentence, describing one particular thing, is coming through, causing them problems and actually killing them, he gets involved in how to stop it, which is a very cool, like, train robbery type deal. Really action-packed, and a lot of stuff like that. And all these things I'm telling you would have been fantastic. Even the bonding with the leader of the village, this other person who taught him how to fight with their ways, to the point where he did them so good that they've truly accepted him into his village and gave him a Jaffe stick, I think is what it's called, and a custom rifle, and his own robes that we all saw him have in The Mandalorian. And all of that was fantastic. Even give him a bantha to ride. I don't know if he technically got that, or that was just like, hey, take a bantha, go check this out and come back. And all of that, once again, fantastic. Great world building, great character building. So he went from just a ruthless killer working for money to someone who wanted to do things for a village. He wanted to be a part of something, which all leads to the characterization of him wanting to take over for Jabba, or from Jabba. Okay, so he decides he wants to be a mob boss. Cool, he wants to be a major domo. No, not major domo, that's the other guy. He wants to be a... oh, daimyo. I love how they throw in some, like, interesting other terms that work perfectly fine for what they are. Like, he wants to be like a feudal lord. Which actually makes sense in where they're at. And basically Jabba had all these different groups of gangs and sections of Mos Eisley under his control, but they all sort of work symbiotically together. Like, hey, you're doing this, we do this, we all take care of each other, nobody causes any problems, right? Right. And since Jabba's been dead, and then even what's his face is now dead, people are sort of just grabbing whatever they can get. Meanwhile, Boba is spending all his time in a bacta tank, healing, which makes sense. He went through a whole lot, so being partially digested to a degree, spending years, what we find out eventually is years with the Sand People, so with terrible exposure to the sun and everything else like that, and being a normal person, no coverage, nothing like that, he gets really wrecked, and then he manages to go fight with our Mando that we know now. And then he comes back, does all this other stuff. We even get to see him do everything else. Basically, what I'm trying to get at is everything that happens in a flashback in Boba Fett, great. And unfortunately, we have to offset that with, here's our flashback, here's what happens now. Almost everything that happens now is actually done kind of bad. While the acting is okay, the physicality of Boba himself isn't great. He gets his ass handed to him in his first episode. Actually, completely throughout the first episode. But mind you, when he's still healing, it makes sense. When he's really fucked up, it makes sense. But as somebody who's supposed to be like, I'm the new ruler of everything, Jabba's territory is my territory now, you'll bow down, and people are sent to kill him, and then he barely survives, doesn't make sense. So he tried to play good guy, he tried to play nice feudal lord, and he basically isn't trying to kill anybody, he's not trying to do anything. He, in fact, brings a lot of the people under his wing, as it were, trying to build a family. And in a gangster sense, cool, but just how it's been executed is bad. I think that ultimately the storytelling doesn't work in this story. And I'm not even getting to the worst episode they've done yet. I'm just getting to the idea of the universe. The world building is nice. We're on Tatooine. We're good. We get to see these things with people we've never gotten to hang out with before. Although we've seen a little bit in Mandalorian of the Tusken Raiders and how they do things and how they live life. How they have like sign language for those who can't speak their language is pretty cool. How they can accept others from outside. How Din Djarin got involved with them, no one knows. But like everything that Boba does to build up to the new series, technically speaking, is done well. But the way it's broken and interspersed with bad storytelling in the modern age sucks. I wish they had just restructured this as the whole front part of the series was chronological episode of the flashbacks, and just build up until he gets the Slave One back, and then we eventually know that he's gonna go join Mando by chance to go find his armor, and then pick it back up with him waking up in the back to tank and starting the new episode. Now, I know that what they're trying to do is saying that while he's in the tank and healing, he's reliving these moments that a lot of them have to deal with. Of course, it's what they use with flashbacks. It's trying to old problem to the new problem. I solved this problem by remembering how I got through it in the past, that kind of thing. Then they also threw in flashback to his childhood at the cloning facility, and then even when he saw his dad die. Like, it would have been kind of cool at some point to see him learning how to fight and learning how to be a badass, how he got to the point of even where he's hunting down Han Solo, that kind of stuff. Maybe that would be something cool. Modern day Boba is a changed man after going through the Sarlacc, after spending all that time with a family and learning to do things for the family instead of for yourself. And just being a greedy, self-focused asshole, which is basically what he was before. That's actually character development, except we never got to see anything of that character before. We just get that from context. If you exclude comics and other references that are no longer canon, or some are possibly canon, it's hard to know anymore. You don't have any history for Boba except he was a kid, he was a bounty hunter, he fell in the Sarlacc like a bitch. And he comes out and he keeps getting his ass kicked. Eventually learns to kick ass, blows up some cool stuff, threatens some people, kills some people, tries to work deals with people, gets taken advantage of, all that. Quiet, computer. Okay, let's talk about it. The episode with the mods. Good setup to a person coming to him asking for his help, as he's the guy in charge. He's like, hey, this is y'all thing to fix. Help me deal with this. These people stole from me. I want my stuff back, or I want the money owed to me. And so that guy, who is Stephen Root, which is pretty awesome in its own right, takes him to meet, or sends him to after the mods. Mods are people who use droid parts, basically androids, basically, in a way. Where they're part human, part droid, but on purpose, not out of choice, or not out of emergency, like when you lose a limb and you need to replace it with a robot hand, or you get shot in the stomach and therefore your entire lower intestines have to be replaced with machinery. Which is a cool scene. It was a really cool scene. So that's how we knew who the mods were. Now these people, they're all punk looking and half robotic, and then they have a cluster of brand new shiny hover vestas. I'm not joking. Everything on Tatooine is filthy and disgusting and a billion years old and recycled and hobbled together with glue. These are brand new. Literally, they look like Vespas, and they're supposed to look like the mod style from, I think, the 60s. Um, Including the bright colors, the crazy amount of mirrors, which makes no sense. But they get involved in a slow speed chase, and I mean this in the worst possible way. They couldn't make this look quick, so they're going through the streets of Mos Eisley, or Espa. I think it might be Espa. I always forget. Yeah, Espa. And chasing an actual speeder, and it's so bad. So badly filmed, badly green screened. It's so slow. It just looks ridiculous. Some of the action in this looks like it's straight out of a Super Sentai or Power Rangers, and a modern one at that, where it's crystal clear and crisp. But they also do, like, at one point, Fennec Shan dives off a roof to avoid getting stabbed by something, and literally is like that Power Rangers roof dive, where it's like, whoo, and then it's so bad. And then he basically brings this gang of kids under his wing because he needs some kind of muscle behind him. His 2 Gamorrean guards that he spared their lives, they're serving him pretty good, but he can only do so much with 2. He already was nearly killed by a Wookiee, which is pretty badass, actually, to bring him, Black... I can't pronounce his name. Kyrgyzstan. I don't know. Kyrgyzstan. I have no idea how you pronounce the damn name. But it's a big ass Wookiee. He's black and all matted up. He's got electric electric, what do they call them? Brass knuckles built into his hands. Apparently he's had his arm like reinforced with metal or something from the comic books. And apparently he and Boba have a history in the comics. I don't know if that history comes from before this, technically speaking, or if this is building some history. But either way, he was hired to kill Boba, nearly kills Boba, and then Boba captures him and holds him prisoner. The remaining Hutts, which are Jabba's cousins apparently, trying to claim Jabba's territory. They come in and they're like, hey, look, you can have this territory, we're getting the hell out, and hey, here's a Rancor. You want a Rancor? You're probably gonna need one. You know the other one. You want this one? And then they're like, you can keep the Wookiee too, we don't need him. So Boba's like, you can get the hell out of here. He lets him free. And Jesus Christ, if this isn't the worst run off screen I've ever seen. So the path that everybody's coming up to the palace in is basically the main road, as it were, to said palace. The Hutts are here on their litter, as they call it, being held up by all their slaves. The Rancor, and that's asleep with its Danny Trejo, is right here. They're here in front of the door. Here's our BK. He goes, he like, whoa, like slinks off screen like an idiot. It's really stupid. But then we get a Rancor, which is cool. And then Boba says, I'm gonna ride this Rancor. And Danny Trejo says, I bet you think you're gonna ride this Rancor. Actually, he doesn't say that, but you can see it in his eyes. Like, frankly, you should look a gift Rancor in the mouth. In theory, they gave it to him to kill him. It does seem like there's some kind of hinky stuff going on with the Rancor and that. We didn't cover that in the last episode or so. But he wants to learn how to ride it. It supposedly has imprinted on him, because I guess the first human, they specifically say human, that a Rancor imprints on, it will protect and bond with. And supposedly this Rancor has been around a while, but had its eyes covered all this time like a hawk. Except that Danny Trejo is its keeper, and somehow he's not bonded to it, but doesn't. Either way. Apparently within the lore, Rancors were a lot of things. So now he has a Rancor. He's got the mod squad. He's got 2 Gamorreans. He's got a Fennec. And he's now pissed off the Pikes to the point that the Hutts are leaving. So when he blew up the train we didn't mean to blow it up, but he stopped it coming through the territory. The Pikes had all of the Tuskens killed, which pissed off Boba. So Boba comes to town like, hey, what the fuck? So his whole idea is he wants to gain the power to fight the Pikes, as it were. And it's probably why he took over Jabba's area, thinking he would have basically a ready-made thing. So now he's pissed off everyone except for the people who are now newly on his side. And even Fennec, who basically signed on because reasons. Like, it was originally like payback for saving her life, and then turned into, let's see where this goes. And then turned into, okay, boss, what's going on? Because he's like, hey, why be a loner when you could be a part of something? That's his thing. So after that, he goes back into town. By the way, he walks everywhere. You know, because Tatooine is about that big. Walks everywhere, especially with his people. How they don't have a speeder, I have no idea. It makes sense when you're a Hutt and you weigh 10 million pounds and you want your slaves to walk you everywhere. Makes sense. When you have a jetpack, there's no reason. So he goes down to the local club / bar. He's owned by this Twi'lek chick. Been there every other episode or so. He walks in there and there's BK, or you know, that's our big Wookiee, who's now been freed. He doesn't have to go for anybody. He gets pissed off at the, I think the Niktos? I can't remember. They're basically the people who enslaved him and forced him into the fighting pit. So he was a gladiator, is his whole history. Nice back history there that we get in a lot of exposition. As he's he's trashed a whole table of them, grabs one, he's holding it up in the air. So the lady who owns the place is like, hey, fucking stop. He's like, look, you were better than this. You were a gladiator once. You were this. You could have all this back. But if you just tear them down and do all this other stuff, you're not going to be worth anything. Not to mention you have a sizable bar tab that could just easily disappear if you put that guy down. And he says, I got plenty of money. Rips the dude's arm off, throws him to the ground. And apparently it grows back because they're lizard people. And then Boba's like, cool. So Wookiee goes outside. Boba says, hey, you want a job? So now he's like, I have a Wookiee. I have kids on Vespas who have got claw hands. Clamps. The clamps! And a cybernetic lady, and 2 Gamorreans, and a Rancor that will likely try to kill him at some point. And he's trying to take on the Pike Syndicate, who just landed a fuck ton of people in town. And then he says, hey, we need some muscle. We need some people to join in. And Fennec's like, I know a guy who likes money. Cue the Mandalorian music. Like, literally, they cued the Mandalorian music right then. Leading up to this week, which is absolutely the best episode of Boba Fett. And Boba Fett wasn't it at all. In fact, this was an episode of The Mandalorian, which is pretty cool. So, picks up a little ways after where we left off with Mandalorian Season 2. And basically, he's going to go collect a bounty.
I see him right now.
Gets in a little over his head with a battle that he's in. Trying to take on a few too many people at one time. Pulls out the Darksaber, which he still has, which is cool. Fucks everybody up, but then also fucks up his own leg. You know, which they get into at some point. Kills a guy, collects a bounty, goes all the way to Halo. Have we ever established that ring worlds exist in this universe? I've never seen it. So they're literally on a spinning ring world that looks just like a fucking Halo. The inside looks like agriculture and stuff like that, and some cities. And then there's like a bottom underneath that looks more like a city at night. It's cool. And he's limping everywhere because he's fucked. You know, he really messed up his leg with the Darksaber. Basically, it's a situation of what would happen if you're swinging around a lightsaber that you're not used to using, and, well, somebody deflects it into your leg. Literally what happens, essentially. So, we're getting our good old Din Djarin on. He needs some information, so he did this job. He's like, keep your money, just give me the info I need. He's like, fine. Go down here, do the thing, climb down a ladder, take a left, go down 6 corridors, go right on Murphy Street, go down exactly 3 lights. You'll see an open clearing. If you take 2 more steps, you'll fall, but that's okay, because where you're going is right there. That's basically how it goes. And he comes up on the Armorer and Big Mando. I know Heavy Mando, but you know, it's just mean to call him Heavy. So apparently they managed to escape, and they moved their covert there. Said there were 3 of us that survived. We don't see the 3rd one. We don't know who that might be. But she and Heavy Mando escaped. They fix up his leg with cool Bacta spray. Gotta love that stuff. It's like Neosporin on turbo mode. And then basically, hey, look, I've got a Darksaber. Do you? Do you know what this is for? Yes. Cool. Hey, what's that spear you got there? I got it from a lady who did a thing. Oh, cool. We're gonna melt that down because we can't have Beskar weapons. Beskar's made for armor. We're gonna melt this down and turn it into armor. Hey, can you make armor for a little green guy? Why? Because I have a little green guy. I can technically do that, but why? So they melt down the tip of the spear and turn it into what looks like chainmail. No idea. And she puts it in a little bindle form. Like, no joke, they put it in a little bindle. That coincidentally, when we look at it later, looks like a little head and pointy ears coming off of it. That's actually cute. Don't know if that was intentional, but it worked. I don't think it was intentional from the beginning. I think at that point, it's like, you know, we should do. And then Heavy Mando's like,
hey, bitch, I'm actually a Vizsla, and you didn't know that until she said my name a minute ago, and I probably didn't actually know that until I wrote it into this season, because I'm Jon Favreau. That's my sword, give it here, fuck you.
And he's like, no, I don't want to do that. By the way, she'd been training him to use the saber. So, one thing about it, and I don't know if this was ever, I haven't watched all Clone Wars or Rebels. So, when the Darksaber apparently is used by anyone, if you are moving with the saber for a purpose, in a way, it works like any lightsaber. But if you are going against the saber, or you are not fighting your enemy properly, but you're worried about the saber doing its thing, it apparently gains mass. So it literally, you can see it getting heavier in his hand where he can't even lift it. And I noticed it in the first battle when he got his ass kind of handed to him. When he's swinging it around, it started to look like it was heavy. And he like flipping it, and then it hits the ground and starts dragging on the ground. And it's like, that was never established. So, new cool thing to where somehow the Darksaber is somewhat sentient. And if you aren't using it properly, or you're not in sync with it properly, it gets to the point that it doesn't want you to use it, so it just starts getting heavier. It's very much like Mjolnir, except it's not about worthiness. It's about intent. So Fat Mando is like,
that's my sword, bitch, give it here.
He's like, nah, it's mine. And he goes, I'm gonna use it. Quick fight with Fat Mando. You can figure out how it ends. Basically, he ends up, we don't see this, and I think they should not have cut it. So he gets a mysterious message from somebody we know. It says, hey, come Tatooine. I got a spaceship for you. Because he still doesn't have a spaceship. R.I.P. Razor Crest. So he hops on a Starliner where he has to give up all his weapons before getting on. It was a super, like, TSA moment. It was so, like, he's so put out. He's like, goes through the metal detector and they're like, hey, you got stuff on you. You need to take it off. And he's like, I'm Mandalorian. My weapons are my religion, which worked in the first few episodes back when. And it doesn't work this time. They're like, well, you can talk. The robot literally says you could take it up with my boss. Or you can just put your shit in this case right here. And then the, like, 2-minute thing of him taking off all his weapons. And then we get the Joker moment. Where a little kid flips around in the seat and looks back at him and waves. We don't get the making funny faces. No, he could have been making faces under the helmet. I like to think that he was. And guess what? He's going to Tatooine. Why? Because Boba Fett called him. No, that's not actually what happened. So he goes back to Mos Eisley, goes back to the hangar with Peli something. God, what is her name? Amy Sedaris. And she's with her droids, and this big rat thing takes one of her new droids, because you always got to have a new droid to sell toys. And basically turns into a monster movie for a second, where they're trying to kill it and can't kill it. She goes behind the thing, and it like grabs her, and it's like trying to pull her while she's trying to get the gun. Thinks she's gonna die. Mando comes in. It's definitely it looks like a shot from season 2 or season 1, where he leans over and shoots and kills the rat thing. Either way, he's like, hey, I'm here. You called me. And she's like, I did? I guess I did. Yeah. He's like, got that spaceship for me? And she's like, yeah. Now, this is one of the cooler parts of any of these series.
Ready to have your mind blown?
Basically, somehow, I'm not entirely certain how, but you could put a couple things together and maybe work it out. She had discovered an original Naboo starfighter. That's right. We're going all the way back to fucking episode 1. Naboo starfighter. It's torn the fuck apart. Bare frames, engines exposed. Paint's all wrecked. And he's like, this is a ship you got me? She's like, look at this thing. It's a classic. All this other nonsense. Literally used car bullshit. It's hilarious. And it's like, okay, just give me some time. You already gave me the money. Give me some time. We'll fix it up. We'll get these parts. We'll make it good. And what we get from here is a montage of building the new Mando hot rod. I'm not joking. This is literally what it is. They get this part. They call it I don't even know what the hell it was called. And it ends up being mounted on the front of the hood kind of thing. And it looks like a big ass air cleaner and supercharger sticking out of the hood. Literally looks like a thing. They replaced a lot of body panels, but not all of them. So it looks like a 32 hot rod with the exposed engine. Because you can see the turbines and stuff inside each thing. Just slightly open. Most of the yellow paint is gone, so it's almost all silver, like him. They start adding all these mods. She's like, you didn't need that. And he's like, but, if I didn't do this, this would explode. And she's like, that's why I'm installing this thing. And you push this button, you'll be there. He's like, you'll be here, but you push this button, you'll be there. And he's like, okay, I guess it'll work. So after that for a little while, which is kind of fun, as a car guy, I really actually enjoyed this. It's test drive time. This is where we get some good shit and a repeat event. So so this is a member berries thing entirely. They literally go through a good portion of the pod racer path. No joke. They literally go through a good chunk of the pod racer path from episode 1. So they literally like, hey, remember pod racing? Hey, remember the Naboo starfighters? They do that. It's cool, but they do it. Where because he's used to the Razor Crest, which is a big clunky gunship and cargo hauler. This thing is a super fast, super lightweight starfighter that is God knows how many years old, 30, 40, 50 years old. And she's like, this thing is older than the Empire. It's like, it's it's like, it's good, and hey, it doesn't have all the crap that you have to worry about, with the New Republic and all that. And he's like, it's a good point. So he, after taking a ground level, he's like, okay, let's see what it can really do. Pulls back on the stick, which makes no sense considering pushing forward on the stick made it go slower. How pulling back makes it go up, I have no idea. How these things are piloted doesn't make sense. But either way, flies it up into the sky. And there's another Starliner going by, and he does a real close flyby. Sees the same kid, looks like the same kid, out of the window. He's flying right next to it. He looks over at the kid, and he's like, and then flies around the thing. And then he's just like doing a couple really nice fast flybys. And then he gets a warning thing. And I was like, oh, of course, it's going to break down while he's in orbit. And he's going to have to do some crazy shit to get it to not die on him while he's crashing through the atmosphere. Nope, that's not what it is. It's the cops. This motherfucker gets pulled over more times than anyone. So it's 2 X-Wings. New Republic, got to do the thing. And they're like, need to see your license and registration. Where's your transponder? What the fuck? And they're like, and he's like, did I do something wrong? It's like, yeah, you're not supposed to fly that close to a transport vessel or a Starliner. He's like, oh, sorry about that. And they're like, well, what about this? You're missing this. He's like, look, we just built this thing. Not everything's installed. I'm doing a shakedown run. Sorry about that. I'll take it easy. And then, like, the newbie really wants to really, like, tell him to pull over and all this nonsense. And the other guy's like, hold on, let's just give him a warning. And I'm like, I know that voice. So it goes over to the other guy. It's the same X-Wing pilot that he's encountered twice before. He's like, your voice sounds familiar. And he's like, do you used to pilot a Razor Crest? And he's like, no. They're like, it's funny because the Razor Crest got involved with this kind of stuff with some Imperial remnants. Know anything about that? He's like, no. And he's like, oh, we're going to need you to pull over. You know what I mean? I mean, they're literally treating it like a traffic stop, which is really funny. And Mando does the cool fucking thing. He pushes the button. He was told the button would do a thing, and he's like, I'll push the button. This is what I thought was really cool. So, Mando always wants to get out from under the thumb of anyone, especially those who are trying to ask too many questions about what he's doing and where he's been, who he's killed. Hey, what's that cargo? And so, he's got 2 X-Wings, which are really, at this point, modern starfighters, flying with him, and he's just like, pushes the button, and it's like, and it's just fucking gone. It's just like, poof. It's like, and the other pilot is like, he's like, how did he spool up to FTL that fast? Or how did he jump that fast? Because it takes a minute to actually do their hyperdrive. And the other guy's like, that wasn't hyperdrive. He was just showing us the sublight engines. It's like, this thing is so instantaneously fast. And all those mods that she was doing, holy crap. Like, he has a NOS button, but it does what the Fast and Furious wishes it would do. Mind you, no friction or anything. They're in space. Starship, anyways. It literally, poof, just gone. I'm like, should we go after him? Should we tell everybody about this? He's like, do you really want to do paperwork? It's always the excuse in any TV or movie when it comes to cops not doing their job. It's like, do you really want to do this paperwork? Somebody should just say yes, and that person would be Nicholas Angel. Comment down below if you understand that reference. So he goes back, he lands back at the thing, talks to Pelly, and she's like, hey, this lady was here asking questions about you, looking for you, see if I can get a message to you. He's like, what lady? He's like, well, I told her to buzz off and lock the doors and everything like that because I know how much you don't want people looking for you. And he's like, well, what lady? And then he goes, Fennec Shan. Of course, this bitch is always, she's a ninja. Let's just be honest. She hops down off of the crates and stuff. She's like, is that security system even worth the shit? And he's like, no. And he's like, Fennec, what can I do for you? Why are you looking for me? And she's like, hey, you want to make some money? And he's like, what does Fett need? He's like, muscle. He's like, here's some money. And he's like, keep it. This one's on the house. But I gotta go see a little friend first. So, the best episode of the Book of Boba Fett had fuck all to do with Boba Fett until the very end of the episode. This was a Mandalorian Season 2 episode, or Season 3 episode, technically. And it's just inserted into here because Boba needs some extra muscle, and why not have somebody who's really hard to kill, and another Mando. And then it's like, okay, so his whole idea is he wants to go see Grogu. How he knows where Luke took Grogu? Nobody fucking knows. But apparently there's a thing in there. He didn't exactly leave a calling card like, hey, we'll be on this planet training every day. If you want to stop by, come on. So here's the question. Boba needs him to help with his incoming Pike War. And he said, okay, I'll help, but I gotta go find my little green buddy first. How the fuck is it supposed to progress from here within the story of Boba Fett? Now, by the way, we're done with flashbacks, because all our flashbacks caught us up to the point that he literally left Tatooine in Slave 1 to go find his armor. And then that catches us up to everything else. Now we're in, from here on out, it's today's storytelling. But now we've involved our other Mando, who we know and love and care about, and actually do like, and this very boring character who hasn't done anything except for talk a lot and shoot a couple people, I think. You can definitely beat people with sticks. So the best thing about Boba, new Boba, is that he does only hand-to-hand combat and stuff he learned with the Tuskens. But it seemed like whenever he was in The Mandalorian, he did a bit more, especially once he got his armor back. But it seems like he's in a whole new mindset, and I think that's the thing about this character. And I'm talking about this with my buddy Tyler. Everybody wanted to see the old, badass, ruthless, gun-for-hire, Mando-shaped guy who didn't talk much and shot a lot. No disintegrations. And we don't get that. We get an old guy who sleeps a lot, walks around with his friends, talks to some people who don't want to listen to him, and in no way does he ever reinforce his badassery. He sent the mod squad after the mayor of Mos Espa, or his major domo, as I keep calling him. That would be his assistant mayor. He sent the mod squad to chase him down, and then flies to them once it's done to threaten the guy. And then they torture him back at the palace somewhere, somehow. There's a couple very goofy scenes that are thrown in here and there, and I can appreciate a little bit of humor, but this is not a character that was ever meant to be funny, but they throw in really dumb comedy sometimes. And I get them wanting to rebirth this character. This is a new origin for Boba Fett. Literally being born again from the Sarlacc, and then having everything stripped away that he used to be, in the literal sense, and having to start over with a brand new mindset with the Tuskens, both one for survival and then learning how to be a part of something, and then work for something and towards something, and then to have all that taken away from you. That's a lot of good character development, and then what's done with it is bullshit. And it's just like he shows sympathy towards these people that he's supposedly ruling over, which is fine. He doesn't want to rule with an iron fist or at the barrel of a gun. He wants to be respected, not feared. Before, he was feared. Jabba was feared, but also respected. You didn't want to piss off a Hutt. Now he's very slowly building this new gang together, this new family, as it were, and he got all of the other gang leaders in town to be like, look, if you're not going to side with me, if you're not going to help me, at least promise me you'll stay out of the way. We'll take care of the Pikes because it's mutually beneficial for us to do so. It's like, if they're here, it's going to make our lives all worse. Let me and my people take care of this. If you're not going to help, stay out of the way, and then we can all benefit from when we win. And they're like, okay, we're going to do that. And hopefully that actually works out. But what I really wanted to see is him earn the respect of these other leaders and stuff like that, to where they want to side with him in this war that he's incidentally started. But we don't see that. We see a lot of goofiness. We see some dumb shit. We see a Wookiee running away like a stooge, instead of just standing there like a pissed off badass. And then he becomes a pissed off badass in the next episode. There's a whole lot of good in this series. And as I told Tyler, I'm like, look, they have a ton of good elements in this recipe. Unfortunately, nobody told them in what order to put anything in and how much of one thing to do. Do we have a whole lot of nostalgia? Do we have a whole lot of character? Do we have a whole lot of silly fight scenes? Do we have a minimal amount of this? What order do we tell this in? It's very badly mixed and very badly assembled of what could have been a really good story. And it's a lot of people would really think that this is more along the lines of what Marvel has done with some of their series so far. Except this is being built on the back of what they did with Mando. And some would argue that some episodes are wonky, but overall the show is good as a whole. This show is bad overall. As a whole, it's not a good show. And it has to do with the structure. It has to do with the flow. It has to do with the actual storytelling. And then the one good episode they get, one is told by is directed by Bryce Dallas Howard, and it's so much better, and the vibe is so different. Everything about it is different when it's completely centered around Din Djarin. If it's Boba Fett, they can't fucking figure it out. If it's Din Djarin, we've had 2 seasons figured out. We know how to build something out of that. So what we got was an episode of The Mandalorian that overlapped into Boba Fett. And it was good because there was no Boba Fett. There was nothing about his bullshit. It was all about Mando. Or all about Din Djarin. That one episode tore down everything that they were trying to build as a standalone new series over here. And I know all these new episodes with Ahsoka, with Obi-Wan, all these things are going to have some form of overlap. They have to. There's no way around it. Even though some of them are taking place now, some of them are taking place in the past. We're going to have a Cassian series, which I thought was originally going to be called Andor or something like that. Now it's either way. So that one hopefully will make up the difference that Boba Fett's not doing. They turned him into a cartoon character. And I think that's the other thing. This is like a Saturday morning cartoon with some mild violence instead of being a badass gangster story. Even if you do the rebirth of the hunter into a gang leader, into a mafioso, that story's been done and it's been done well. But this is doing it so badly. I want it to be good. And it's not so far. Now, maybe after this episode, it'll change. Like, I don't know. I don't even know if Mando's going to come back at all in this season, which would really put a damper on it because they said they needed his help. He's like, let me go disappear for a week first. I got to go find my kid. And who knows how that's going to go. And they've already established some new storyline for Mando Season 3 within that. Some interesting clashes and kind of stuff like that. That's what they did with this episode. This episode was more interesting, did more to progress the story, and did more fun than all the rest of the Boba Fett so far. And it's all because it was told in a way that made sense. Had they just done flashbacks first, like take all your flashbacks, establish them all here, and then you take the events that happen in modern day and you put them here in chronological order, it would make more sense. Like, I know that they were trying to build up the whole, oh, look, in this episode, this happens, so I gotta remember this. But you don't have to do that. You really don't. You don't have to specifically jump back to do that. Now, if he wanted to have minor flashbacks to when he was a kid, and you start seeing some of the stuff when he's dreaming, that's another story. You even get that. You get a flashback within a flashback at one point, or a weird, crazy dream flashback within a flashback, and that's weird. Like, if they had just told one linear story, front to back, instead of very badly diced together, I think it would have been a significantly better story. Clean up some of the CG that's weird, some of the green screen that's weird, especially with the hover bikes. It looked like they were not ready for this. And they shot it as a super action-y scene, and a whole lot of cuts, and a whole lot of moving parts, and stuff like that. And it was slow. They cut, to make it seem energetic, they cut a whole lot of stuff together very quickly. And then they added all this cartoony nonsense. It's like, the flashback stuff is super dark and serious and meaningful. The modern day stuff is cartoonish and bullshit. And it's somehow the same story with the same character with the same people. And it makes no fucking sense. I'm so tired of it. This review has gone on longer than I thought. However, originally I was going to do why the Book of Boba Fett doesn't work and Peacemaker does. This gives you a whole idea of why Boba Fett isn't working. But now, in comparison with the Mando episode we got, shows you the difference between how the story is told and how this story is told, why this doesn't work, and why a single episode of this does, when it's supposed to be this. You tell me. And then I'll talk about Peacemaker as well. New episode comes out on Thursday. I thought it came out today as well. I thought they actually were releasing the episodes alongside Mandalorian. Then I realized, or I'm sorry, Boba Fett. Then I realized I was just watching them on Thursday. It's like, I had the release schedule screwed. So that was my fault. But either way, that's it. Book of Boba Fett. I hope there's some saving grace to it somewhere and it gets better. They gave us a really good episode, and it's a shame that the best episode so far didn't even involve our title character in any way. And it seems too early to be relying on a previous show already. Like, it can't stand on its own feet so badly that they're already bringing someone else in. And I don't get why that's the case. I think it's just Disney too scared to do the right thing. Book of Boba Fett should have been treated like a PG-13 gangster movie. Even a rated R gangster movie. Instead, we're getting a PG show to a degree. And not even like good 80s PG. And then every now and then it bumps up to PG-13 light. You know, there are YouTube series that are better than this. Storytelling-wise, animation-wise, character-wise. And Fennec doesn't have a character. She's what Boba Fett used to be. And Boba is now something new, trying to turn her more into what he is. We'll see. I don't know. He might die. Or he might stick around. Or he might win, and he's going to take over. Right now, he's kind of a big fucking loser. And it's almost like they're making a bigger joke out of the joke he already was. Even though it's supposed to be a story of rebirth, redefining who you are, building something new with like-minded people. And that's not what we're getting. So, I'll see you guys later. Remember, as always, keep on nerding. And either may the Force be with you, or this is the way. Both? Don't know.